Right. Good morning, everyone. For those of you that are joining online as well and watching the recording on YouTube, today's topic is women's mental health. My name is Eliza. I am a psychologist and the clinical consultancy manager at CIC. My background is in organisational psychology. Over in the UK, generally referred to as occupational psychology. I did my studies in Melbourne, Australia, if you didn't pick up on that accent. And I'm delighted to be able to run this webinar with you all today on the topic of women's mental health. So today's topic is all things female mental health. We will be discussing topics such as pregnancy, miscarriage, fertility, but also depression, anxiety, other kind of really common challenges in women. We will also touch on domestic violence and abuse. So I just wanted to be upfront and mention that today. It may bring up feelings of distress or uncomfort for some of you. And please look after yourself through this presentation today and take time if you need to rest and recover. But ensure that the supports are there, and I'll provide my details at the end of the session. But hopefully we can have a safe conversation about some of the challenges for women in this world, but also what some of the things that we can do to support ourselves and the females in our lives. In terms of how you can engage in the session today, I'll have the chat function open as we're going through, so please pop any questions, comments in there. You can either send messages to me privately, or you can send messages that will go out to everyone who's on the call right now. The chat won't be recorded in the recording online, so if you're watching online, you won't be able to see the chat. I might read out questions that come through, but I won't mention anyone's name when doing so. So feel free to utilize that chat. Oh, you can't hear anything for some reason. Please let me know if anyone else is having the same issue. Otherwise, my advice would be jump out and jump back in. I know that's probably not the most tech savvy advice, but it tends to do the trick. Fantastic. I've just had some advice come through from someone privately that they had that and they used a headset in the end. So just check what audio it's connected to. Wonderful. I would want to first off by just asking, pop in the chat, is there anything in particular that you're really interested in learning about today? If there's anything in particular that you want to make sure that I cover or touch on, or any reason in particular for you signing up for the session today on women's mental health. Yeah, oh, fantastic. So anxiety and how that feeds into mental health, and also menopause has come through, and absolutely two topics that we will cover today. So in terms of the content that we'll cover, we've got about an hour together. I'll make sure that we leave time for questions at the end. We'll talk a little bit about women's mental health and what that means in the world. We'll talk about some of the statistics, what are the most common mental health challenges, and the current state of women's mental health. We'll talk about some of those challenges, and that's absolutely when we'll unpack things like the menopause. We'll talk about anxiety, depression, eating disorders, domestic violence. And then we'll think about what are some of those strategies that we can use, both for the women that are on the call right now, but also those that are maybe supporting women in their lives or friends and family members. So what we can do to optimize our well-being. I want to first of all open it up to those of you that are on the call live right now. We've got 70 of us together, and just pop into the chat if you feel comfortable. Again, you can do that privately to me, or you can send a chat message out to everyone. But what comes to mind when you hear the term women's mental health? What are the things that sparks for you? No right or wrong answer here at all. But, you know, for me, there's a lot that comes to mind. And I think that our gender, as well as things like our ethnic grouping, where we live in the world, can all impact on our mental health. So we've got things like, yeah, body and pressure from social media, absolutely. And again, we know that that can impact females and males differently. Postnatal depression has come up there, anxiety, brain fog, anxiety, crying, depression, sadness, lots of things coming through in the chat right now. Hang on, let me just maximize it so I can see. Life in general, not talking about it as needed to stay strong for others. Yeah, Tony, so we'll talk about that in terms of that stigma as well, and that pressure that some females perceive, being judged, that it's more socially acceptable to say not okay than for men. However, the reality is that support services are really stretched. Yeah, there's that pressure. Isolation, being considered dramatic or manic or over emotional. Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing these thoughts. Women are assumed to be good at discussing feelings with others. And again, so there's those stereotypes, isn't it? Yeah. Pressure of looking after elderly parents as well. Yep. And we'll talk about that. You know, again, still there is a large caring responsibility generally placed on females, whether that's children, but whether that's other family members, elderly parents, absolutely. So there's a lot to unpack today. We might not get through it all, but I really hope that this starts a conversation in this forum today, but also across your different organisations and where you're dialing in from. If we think about mental health broadly, no matter what gender or ethnic minority that you come from, it is a very broad construct that includes our emotional, our psychological, and our social well-being. Mental health is not just mental ill health, it includes our overall functioning, and it impacts everything about how we interact with the world. So it impacts our thoughts and how we think, it impacts our emotions and how we feel, and it also impacts our behaviours and how we act in the world, the relationships that we have, how we function in the workplace, and it also really determines how we respond and manage challenges in our lives. So we will all experience stress or adversity, and it impacts how we then respond to that. And it's tied very closely with our overall general well-being and our physical health as well. So it absolutely includes the struggles and mental ill health, whether that's a diagnosed mental health condition, but mental health is very broad, and it also includes positive mental health. So if we think about women, you know, in the UK, the average life expectancy of a woman is 80 years of age, but around the globe, many women face different challenges that can shorten that lifespan. And just some statistics there up on the screen, you know, we can see that according to the World Health Organization, more than half of patients who meet the criteria for a psychological illness get left undiagnosed. So again, that sort of still speaks to that stigma or just general barriers for individuals seeking treatment and support for mental health challenges. Around 1 in 5 women have a common mental health problem. Most common is depression and anxiety, compared to 1 in 8 in men. So mental health conditions are more prevalent in females. Yes, the recording of this will be saved on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch this after, no worries. Depression and anxiety disorders are about 50% more common among women than men throughout the life course, while men are more likely to have substance abuse disorders, but depression and anxiety are most common in females. And we do know that there's points in our life as females that will make us at a higher risk, and we'll talk through that. Pregnancy, whether that's prenatal or postnatal, will have increase our risk as females in terms of mental health challenges, both on mothers and on children. Suicide rates vary between females and males, but globally women are more likely to attempt suicide than men, but men are twice as more likely to pass by suicide. So there are kind of broad ranges of statistics there when it comes, and those main issues that are affecting women's mental health are around pregnancy, but also caring responsibilities, and then also menopause as well. So different points in our lives. There's those social and economic factors as well that can impact on women. However, women generally do find it easier to talk about their feelings, and they do generally have stronger social networks, both which can be protective factors when it comes to mental health. But I think it's interesting, and it already came through in the chat as well, that can also put pressure on women and that need to be strong as well, and that assumption that you do have those social supports and that ability to talk about it. There can also be kind of negative life experiences, whether that's infertility, perinatal loss, as well as exposure to trauma, domestic violence, and abuse in general, that we know is more common in females. Women are typically more likely to care for their children or other relatives compared to men, and this can have an adverse effect on both physical and emotional health, as well as those finances and social life. Women may juggle several roles within a family, so it might be, again, not only engaging in the workplace and providing from a financial perspective, but also then taking on those predominant caring responsibilities. If we look broadly around the globe as well, that women are more likely to live in poverty compared to men. There's also an overrepresentative in low status, low income jobs that are often taken on at a part-time capacity. In terms of kind of around the world, in terms of concerns about their own safety, working at home, primarily on housework, can also lead to feelings of isolation as well. And that can impact in terms of that social network. We know that the workplace is a really positive place for individuals to build connections and build friendships. So if we do have women working in isolated roles or working from home, because they might be juggling caring responsibilities as well, that can impact on mental health. And then we know that sexual and physical abuse can have a devastating impact on mental health. And that is especially true for individuals that may never disclose that they may never feel comfortable to come forward for a variety of reasons. And we know that that can be really damaging as well. If there's any questions or comments on the statistics that are coming through, please feel free to share them in the chat, and I'll keep monitoring that as we go through. The most common women health conditions are really around those life stages. So fertility, pregnancy loss, and postnatal support. The menopause, again, we know that can come at a variety of different ages. Menstrual health more broadly, and then also more broader mental health challenges, whether that's anxiety, depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. Stigma has come up in the chat already, and we know that there still is a great deal of stigma across the globe, which does vary based on where you are located, around barriers for accessing support when people are struggling. Women are often overlooked in terms of their mental health, and there still can be that stigma surrounding their mental health, whether, as mentioned, are you just being over emotional or hormonal? And things can be misdiagnosed or put down to hormones more broadly. Or you're at a stressful point in your life, or you've got young children, that's normal, the way you're feeling. So there can be that misdiagnosis, which can then inhibit people from accessing the right treatment and support. I'm surprised that the menopause is not higher in percentage. Childcare, stress, depression, I can relate to the feeling of unfair burden and care towards our child, absolutely. So if we think about what might prevent women in particular for reaching out for support, feel free to just pop some suggestions into the chat. Again, no right or wrong answer here. You can share that privately to me or open to everyone. But we know that there are barriers, whether that might be fear of, perceptions of being judged or being treated differently, maybe perceptions of, or not knowing where to go to reach out for support. It can be very overwhelming to know where do you go for support. Feeling like everyone else seems to be managing these feelings and you're the only one struggling with it. Yeah, absolutely. People stop trusting your judgment at work. Yep, absolutely. So in the workplace as well, is that, will I be treated differently? Will I be overlooked for that next promotion? Yes, absolutely. Fear of being missed out on that promotion. Will I be perceived as not being able to manage the job that I'm doing? Yeah, I've recently learned that the first step is just reaching out and saying, look, I need help. Talking is such a big key. Absolutely. You stop trusting your own judgment. Absolutely. So there can be that internal juggle of, am I thinking clearly? Am I coping or am I not coping? Yeah, once you have kids, people think that you shouldn't work, and so you feel isolated and guilty going to work. Yeah, so again, that kind of internal struggle there. If we think about why often women can feel unheard, often there is a lot of responsibilities that can fall on women, whether that's in the workplace or at home or a combination of both. So it can actually lead to just a lack of time to have these conversations if the individual is already so stretched. There can be that perception that your experience or your symptoms might be dismissed or minimized. And we can see that if we get that response of, oh, that's not that bad, or it will get better. And that can really lead to women feeling quite dismissed. Menopause symptoms often make me feel like I cannot do my job anymore, feeling really insecure and anxious. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We have a working parent and a carer group and a menopause group to provide a safe space to share experiences. Oh, I think that's fantastic. And if we think about some of those initiatives that we can do in the workplace, building those connections and those support groups are so fantastic to connect you to people that are experiencing similar challenges as you. There can be a lack of cultural awareness, that feeling of being judged by others, again, which came through a lot in the chat already, that lack of knowledge about a condition, so just lack of understanding around things like the menopause or things like postnatal depression, that social stigma. And women may be less likely than men to seek treatment about experiencing symptoms of mental illness. And a lot of that will be that internalized self-stigma. So that's that internal conversation or dialogue that's going on around. It might not actually be true that you will be treated differently or dismissed, but it's that pressure that often the individual can place on themselves. I'm just reading through some of the comments. Yeah, absolutely. So just a question there around kind of the makeup genetically between females and males. And yes, absolutely, there are differences, definitely from a hormone perspective, that can make women more susceptible to certain kinds of emotions. Yeah, it can be really, someone's there, just pop into the chat, can be difficult engaging with other individuals in the workplace that might not have the same understanding and awareness around some of female challenges. Comparing yourself to your old self and being annoyed with yourself about it. Yeah, absolutely. So if we think about how we can really support ourselves to those women on the call right now, but for any males that have joined today, but also to females who might be looking to support other females either in the workplace or their friends or family members, it's really important for us to know, what do we look for, both in ourselves or in those people around us? What are those things that we can spot in other people that might just spark up and make us notice that maybe someone's mental health might be impacted? So it's really important for us to think about, in a work environment, if an individual is withdrawing from their team, or even just from a day-to-day basis, they might not be as talkative in meetings. How can we ensure that we pick up on that? And when that happens, how can we then have a conversation and just check in and think about, asking those open questions? Yeah, someone's just sent me a message privately, around that lack of understanding in the workplace around things like menstrual health, and that, that can impact women differently. So how can we make information more accessible to the whole population so that they can really ensure that they're educated and they know that how they can discuss these topics sensitively and provide that support. Other really common signs that we might see that indicate an individual might be suffering with their mental health, we might see physical health being impacted. That might be, a prevalence of nausea, headaches, muscle pain, fatigue in general. Anxiety, absolutely really common. We might see changes in weight or eating patterns that can go up or down. We might see changes in how individuals are engaging with others. So small events might trigger a really significant reaction, which might be very different to how that individual would normally respond. We might see irritability or aggression in conflict. And again, in the workplace, that might lead to conflict between colleagues that might typically get on really well. We might see changes in alcohol use, drug use, or smoking habits, changes in performance as well in the workplace. Again, we might see females who typically quite high performers or really efficient workers and starting to make kind of uncharacteristic mistakes as well. We know that when mental health is impacted, that will have an impact on concentration, self-esteem as well. So it's really common for performance to be impacted. We might see changes in appearance as well. An individual who's suffering with their mental health is likely to have kind of less care for their appearance, and overall just that general sense of exhaustion. If there's any questions or comments there, or if any of these are really resonating with you on the call, just let me know in the chat. Yeah, I've got someone's popped in there, absolutely that weight gain is really difficult to shift. And it can be that cycle, isn't it? If you're already feeling really lethargic or really fatigued, it's really difficult to then find the energy to get up and go for a walk around the block, or get any kind of movement in. Again, if we're feeling really fatigued or if we're feeling stressed or withdrawn, might be more prone to reach for kind of the unhealthy, more calorie dense foods as well. And we know as well the hormonal changes through as we age, as we go through menopause, can make us more susceptible to weight gain as well. So absolutely something that we need to manage really proactively as women. So if we think about what are those things that we can do to support women and their well-being, absolutely got some more comments coming through. Someone's put in there that they can really resonate with the anxiety, with the weight gain, and with that foggy brain as well. I focused on exercise. That really helped. Running, cycling, yoga, and meditation, and work. It worked a lot. Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing. I managed to lift my spirit and relax by drawing and painting. Yes, I love that. So thinking about what are those outlets for you as an individual. And yeah, sometimes I'm eating just to keep myself awake so I can carry on with my day job, and really juggling those responsibilities. Fantastic. So if we think about some of those tips up on the screen now, and again, when I'm reading through these, I want you to please keep sharing in the chat what are some of those things that work for you as well, because there's no one size fits all here, but definitely these are some of those things that we know, looking at the research, can be really helpful. Mood and our mental health plays a really important role in all aspects of our lives. It will impact the relationships that we have, both in the workplace, but also with our friends and family members, how we perceive ourselves, so our self-esteem, our performance in the workplace. Again, we can place a lot of pressure on ourselves. And someone mentioned earlier kind of that comparison between our old selves and our current selves. So if we notice that we're maybe not performing the way that we typically would, or we're not meeting kind of our own goals that we've set for ourselves, that can have an impact. The first thing that is so important is to think about, who have we got around us? What's our network? When we are suffering with our mental health, it can be common for us to withdraw from our friends in the workplace, but also outside of work. But it is important that we ensure that we really think about, who are we connecting with. There's a big difference between taking time out for ourselves consciously to reflect and recharge. And again, there's different people will kind of recharge their batteries in different ways. I personally am someone that does like that time on my own to reflect and kind of recharge solo. But there's a difference between solitude and having kind of loneliness and significant times where we don't have that social support around us. So thinking about, when we do connect, who are we connecting with? Quality over quantity when it comes to our social network. So thinking about, who are those, handful of people that we really feel trusted, that we have that trust and respect with, that we can open up and be and honest about what are the things that are that we're struggling with at that time. The more that we can articulate and put into words that the thoughts that we might be having, the emotions that we might be experiencing, it really forces us to kind of put that out there into the world, to then talk through, to share that problem. Often once we do put something into words, we then actually view that very differently as well. We might notice that maybe we are falling into some negative thinking traps. Maybe we are kind of jumping to conclusions, or engaging in a bit of mind reading, as I like to call it, assuming the way an other individual might respond without actually kind of knowing that. So thinking about, where do we connect? Who do we feel comfortable talking to? So thinking about, where do we find those spaces? Is it in the workplace? Is it family members? Is it friends? Is it joining different community kind of networks? But I want to just open it up, and, for anyone that's on the call right now, just share for me, where do you form those connections, whether or maintain existing connections as well? Because I think that there's two different ways here. We can maintain existing connections, or we can look at building new connections. So if anyone has any ideas around where they find value, whether that is particular community networks, or whether you might have networks in the workplace as well. Fantastic. Someone said my running club is a fabulous place to make new friends. I really enjoy and appreciate the connections I've made in some of my classes at the gym as well. I meet a friend every Sunday morning and we go for a walk together, and we both support each other, and have those conversations. Again, I think that that's really useful, isn't it? It's kind of combining exercise and social support in one. Holds us much more accountable when we kind of commit to that Sunday walk. My meditation group is wonderful, like-minded individuals. So I think often, again, it's finding those groups where you can connect over a joint hobby as well. My martial arts team I train with gave me the confidence to talk. Love that. I meet with a few friends once a month for lunch and a walk. Thank you so much, everyone, for sharing these. Keep them coming. One of my ex-colleagues has become one of my closest friends. We talk on WhatsApp every day. I think as well, we might not live geographically close to some friends or family members, but utilizing those different technology platforms that we do have as well, whether that's WhatsApp, whether that's FaceTiming friends, but how can we ensure that we're really proactively committing to that catch up? So ensuring that it is in the calendar, it's booked in. If it's at kind of a regular, monthly or weekly slot, I find that can be really helpful. Otherwise, as we say, if we're juggling kind of lots of different responsibilities, that can be something that can just slip off. And then someone's put in there that the pandemic has impacted on those relationships, and it's kind of broken some of those relationships. So it's kind of having to reform that after the pandemic as well. I like that. My partner and I eat dinner at the table every night as a rule. It's a lovely way to get the goods and the bads of each day out there. So again, thinking about that habit formation and ensuring that we're prioritizing that time to connect. I think that it is very easy to kind of fall into the devices, TV, etc. So how can we kind of make those good habits for ourselves? Just some additional tips that I've put up on the screen as well. Thinking about the work that we do. Now, yes, work in the more traditional sense in terms of that income that we might have, but also thinking about our other commitments and responsibilities as well. We spend so much of our adult lives at work. So it is really important for us to enjoy the work that we do. Now, we might not love the work that we do all of the time. We might not wake up every morning excited to come to work, but it is really important for us to find some joy or alignment in the work that we do. Work can absolutely be a really positive thing for our mental health. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us an opportunity to build connections, and it also can challenge us and stretch us and give us an opportunity to learn more. Um, so, just reflect, and if your work is giving you no joy and it's not aligned with your values, it can be something that can impact our mental health. So just starting to think about, what does your job, what are some of the things that you enjoy about your job? What are some of the things maybe that can contribute to feelings of stress or poor mental health? Just think about, is the work you're doing aligned with those values? Um, I think it's important for us to think, we might not have perfect alignment between our work and our values, but it's important that they're not completely separate. Protecting your boundaries as well is really important. So yes, work is one component of our lives, but it's important that we also get to the end of the day and still have some kind of fuel in the tank for us to engage in other hobbies, to also give some energy to our family, our friends, etc. So if we're ensuring that we're protecting that time and space, that we're not working, a lot more hours than we're contracted to do, and that we're also able to switch off from work and think about, if you're someone that is constantly kind of thinking about the work tasks that you might have tomorrow, what are some of those things that you can do to ensure that we're protecting those boundaries? Some of the things that I personally find helpful, and again, share in the chat if you've got any ideas or things that you do to really help set those boundaries. That might be things like turning off work email notifications on your phone. Yes, that might not be able to prevent you receiving emails at 10 o'clock at night, but it might just prevent you kind of being notified about those emails. Things like, writing a to-do list for the next day at the end of a work day can help just park everything that's going on in that work job. And then again, yes, you might then kind of walk in and have your next list of to-do lists to do to support your family members, parents, children, etc. But thinking about how can we manage those boundaries? That might be also sitting down and having a conversation with other people in your life to talk through what is working and what isn't working, and really start to unpack and articulate what's going to be most helpful for those boundaries. Oh yeah, fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. So, when you're working from home, taking regular breaks, and take the view that something is very wrong if I cannot do my job in the day. Yeah, I like that. So thinking about, how can we ensure that the workload that I've been given from my employer is feasible to get done. We've only got this many hours in my working day, whatever you're rostered to do. Is it feasible to get that work done? I find working from home, managing childcare, housework, and getting any time for myself almost impossible. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's those juggling those different components and those different responsibilities. Taking regular breaks, as someone has put in the chat there, overwork is one of the fastest routes there is to ill health and burnout. But many women are stuck believing that that just working long hours is the only way to get noticed, and the only way to get ahead, especially if you've taken time out of the workplace to have children or to care for children. Again, there can be this pressure that we've got to make up for lost time. I love working from home, but I also love coming into the office to work as well. I get to meet people and have a chat with others and share advice. Yeah, so just reflecting on where we're working as well, and what works for you, and the impact that that can have. And again, I don't think that there's one solution that works best for everyone, but just taking the time to reflect on what what some of the pros and cons might be from working from home or working in the office, and is there opportunity for that flexibility, having that conversation with your employer, with your manager as well. Yeah, someone sent me a message privately as well and said that underwork can also be an issue. You know, not having any commitments outside of work can affect our mental health as well. Yeah, definitely. Again, that can lead to, um, a lot of time to kind of think through, and again, potentially put more pressure on ourselves. And then the last three there that I think are so important for everyone, no matter what gender, keeping active, eating well, and thinking about how much sleep we're getting. Um, yeah, and noticing our own thoughts and feelings as well. Someone's put into the chat, taking time to actually just check in on our emotions, on our thoughts, and our behaviors. Often we can be so busy and caring for those people around us that we're not actually taking the time to think about our own needs. And I think that, the analogy that I often use is, on an aeroplane in a crisis, whose oxygen mask do we put on first? We have to put on on our own first before we can help those around us. So often as women, especially if we have caring responsibilities, we're putting everyone else first. But to be the best mother, sister, friend, we need to be standing first. So how can we support our own mental health in order to be the best mother, daughter, friend to those around us? So thinking about doing this stuff on the screen is not selfish. It's actually incredibly important so that we can care for those around us. Um, so thinking about where do we go for support? Absolutely thinking about in the workplace, and whichever organisation that you work for, thinking about if there are different advocacy groups or support groups as well, whether that is around the menopause, whether that's around anxiety, whether that's around just women's mental health in general. But thinking about how can you engage in those different networks and connect with people that are going through similar challenges can really help us feel less alone in some pretty isolating times as well. Friends and family, and as I mentioned, quality over quantity when it comes to those relationships. Our peers, our EAP as well. So for some of you, that will be through CIC, the organisation that I work for. That's that one-to-one confidential psychological support. You might also want to talk to your GP about some of those challenges. Thinking about Anxiety UK as well as a resource, if anxiety is very common in women. So how can we really just ensure that we're educating ourselves, but also educating those around us? And Anxiety UK has lots of really helpful kind of just fact sheets and information that might be useful for you to provide those people around you that you might not feel quite understand what you might be going through. And Mind UK is also a fantastic resource. Well Online is a platform that we regularly update at CIC. It is our online resource. There's a whole bunch of fact sheets, videos around a range of different topics. So there's things like work life, home life, our physical health. We also have some information there around financial support, legal advice, etc. Each organisation will have their own login for Well Online, so reach out to your main contact at your organisation if you would like to access Well Online. If you want to access more support through CIC, please feel free to sign up for our newsletter. And you can also watch any of our old webinars on our YouTube channel. So we save all of those online. I've got about 10 minutes left, and I just really wanted to leave enough time if you have any questions. I will stop the recording now, but I just wanted to thank you to those of you online for watching, and for those of you that are here now, please pop any questions into the chat and I'll answer that. But I'm just going to stop the recording now so that there's a bit more privacy.